In a world overrun by zombies, skeletons, and ghouls, one man dares to adventure into the great beyond. That man's name was Steve. Although brave, Steve was shunned from his community, left to live alone and fend for himself. He was forced to gather his own resources and survive off any food the land would give him. For many years he lived in isolation, pretending not to notice any other living thing. Look away, just look away, pretend like you don't notice him. But now, he's going back home, to take vengeance on those who cast him out. This is Stevie Come Back. There he was, plotting his revenge against everyone in Scrollton, his hometown. He was just preparing some tools he would use to exact his revenge. No, not revenge. His justice. Finally, I will be coming home for Halloween. Trick or treat, Scrollton. Trick or treat, he said. Steve left his house, going in the direction he had come from so many years ago, back to what soon would be oblivion. He trekked through the jungle, the tundra, the desert, and the grasslands, and only then did he realize how far he'd actually run from his municipality. Day turned to night, and night turned to day. Many months passed, and in the distance he could see his salvation. He charged forward, blinded by what could be misconstrued as righteousness, but stopped, as to second-guess himself. He readied his weapons, and gripped them tightly, not moving and breathing at all. He waved goodbye to his last chance at turning back, and stepped slowly forward. By this time, night had fallen, and he was ready to strike down anyone that had ever done him wrong. He looked up and shouted, "I have returned from my throne." All the while, citizens were quietly tucked away in their homes, waiting for the light of day, unaware of the horror to come. Steve trudged forward in a loud rage into one of the houses and final resting place for one of the testificates. He pulled out his most reliable blue sword and spoke in a hushed voice. "Your day of reckoning has arrived." In his head he was saying he knew this person. It was his first teacher. However, the beast in him ignored this fact and began walking slowly towards him. As if to swipe a bullet, Steve struck his teacher over and over. And in a puff of smoke, the teacher had fallen to the floor, dead. All his cries of terror ignored. Having felt the pleasure of murder, Steve exited the house with a demonic grin on his face, and Steve continued killing villagers as randomly as they appeared. They fell one by one. Steve switched to a different tool, in hopes that his victims would last longer in an attempt to torture their already broken spirits. At this point, he was grinning as wide as the jack-o'-lanterns around town that were only placed there for Halloween decorations. Again and again, city dwellers fell victim to his angry swings and sadistic methods of torture, until finally all the townspeople had been slain by his hands alone. He knew the feeling of victory, but also great loss, and he was sad to admit that he was experiencing one of those feelings right now. He stood in an empty village hoping to see maybe one survivor who he could claim as his spoils of war, but Steve heard nothing except the sound of blood flowing from the wounds of all the dead people. He was alone, and in an act of cowardice he found the metallurgist's house. Here at the metallurgist's house, he said his final farewell to the world he had only ever hated, and let the molten lava flow into his body, killing him slowly, like he had done all the people in this town.